Part C.2, XML syntax for JSP tags. For this part, when we use Java Beans, there is a special part we may need to consider. So that is the XML syntax. So why XML syntax? So we try to make the way we use the JSP Beans following XML style syntax rules. Why is that? Yeah. So for this part, I'd like to give you some background on XML technology. Yeah. I'm afraid some of you may not have this background, so I just go through the basic properties, some basic rules. So after that, then you can understand the JSP way, following the XML syntax, the main reason behind it. Yeah. All right. Yeah. First, let's look at the basics of XML. Yeah. First, what is the XML? Why we call it XML? Yeah. Its name comes from this extensible markup language. First, markup language. Yeah. Similar to HTML, that markup language, but the main difference part, extensible. Yeah. So how to make it extensible? Yeah. So we will see that. Yeah. How to make this language extensible? Yeah. Yeah. We will see that soon. Yeah. First, the first version of XML 1.0 was created in 1998 by W3C. Yeah. So then after that, after so many years, the views, people look at this technology changed significantly. Yeah. Yeah. So we will see that. Sometimes people feel this technology is very important, but later, going down. Yeah. So things like that. Yeah. All right. XML was designed to store and transport data. So here you can see the main purpose for this technology: store and transport data. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And another property, it is human readable and machine readable. So the text file, yeah, human readable, yeah. So it's a text file. Other than that, the tag names, a lot of things from the names, you can guess the meaning approximately, yeah. Yeah. So human readable, but machine readable. So what do you mean machine readable? Right? Machine readable. So mainly about, many different software applications can process, can, easily understand and process XML data. So that's the meaning of machine readable. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So a lot of similarities, much like HTML, but also a lot of differences. Yeah. So we will compare. Yeah. So a lot of places, a lot of properties. We will compare these two markup languages. And it is self-descriptive. Yeah. So why human readable, right? Why we call it human readable? Because it is designed as self-descriptive. Yeah. Here, I like to show you a simple example of XML data. Yeah. So you can see it uses many different tags, right? And all these tags, from the tag names, you can guess the meaning for the data. So that is the self-descriptive property. Yeah. All right. Another property, software independent, hardware independent tool for storing, transporting data. Yeah. So it is not bound to any specific software or any specific hardware. Yeah. Hardware, it is easy to understand. So many different hardware, different machines, devices, so can use this data format. But for software, still, so if we look at HTML, HTML is used mainly by the web browsers, right? Web browsers. It's a software, yeah, special software application. Yeah. So you can see HTML mainly targets web browsers, but XML does not target any software. It is just a data storage transporting format. Yeah. But many different software applications tools can support this format. Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, so the way to represent data using tags. Yeah. Regarding the text structure, so we will discuss the rules for tag structures. Yeah. All right. Yeah, another property different from HTML, it has no predefined tags. In HTML, all tags are predefined, right? Yeah. We, as users, we cannot define any tags. Yeah, right? So if you use tags that are not predefined, the web browser just ignore all those unknown tags. But in HTML, not HTML, but in XML, that's different. Yeah. So the application designers, they need, when they use XML, so they provide the specific meanings, ways, names for their special tags. Okay? Yeah. So, yeah, another property. And then we try to explain why we call it extensible. Yeah. The reason is very simple. Yeah. Because in software development, you need to consider the versions, the version change. Right? The version changes significantly. Right? Yeah. So think about when you develop new versions of some software applications, can you still handle the data for the older versions? Yeah, you should. So we need that kind of backward compatibility. Yeah. So here, XML is very friendly for that backward compatibility. Yeah. So why is that? Yeah. Here, the idea is very simple. Why it can support backward compatibility so well? Yeah. The reason is simple. Yeah. Because for the newer versions, software applications, you may like to add new features, right? When you add new features, you may like to add new tags in your XML data representation. Yeah. But when you add new tags, older tags can still be used. So there is no contradiction between new tags and old tags. Yeah. So your new versions, you can still display, process XML data in the old tags. Yeah. There is no problem. Yeah. But at the same time, you have new features. Yeah. If the users want to use new features, they have to use the newer versions. Yeah. So that's the extensible, the meaning. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Right. So for that kind of consideration, yeah. So the backward compatibility, at least logically, so there is no problem. Okay. Yeah. All right. Next, XML Design Goals. Yeah. So the W3C, so when they design this special language for data representation, yeah, they have some very important goals in their mind. Yeah. So let us look at those goals. Yeah. First, it simplifies data sharing. Yeah. Because it is very common for different systems, incompatible system, different system, so usually incompatible, right? Yeah. How to exchange data between those systems. Yeah. So that problem should be solved in the general software development, yeah, especially for web applications. Yeah. So it is designed to solve that problem, data sharing. Yeah. So completely different type of web applications, they can exchange data, yeah, using this, uniformed way to do it. Yeah. All right. It simplifies data transport. Yeah. All right. So the data transport, yeah. So the data stored in text format, and so then you may want to store the data on your hard drive, hard disk, or you send the data to different machines. Yeah. Anywhere you have this file, the system can understand it easily. Yeah. Yeah. So for the transport, yeah, anywhere, any system, any hardware, any software, this format can be understood easily. Here I'm talking about design goal, right? Design goal. Yeah. Yeah. The reason I emphasize this point is sometimes the design goals may not be achieved well. So designers, they try to do these things, but may not be very successful. At the end, they may not get a good result. Yeah, so that is possible. So that's why I emphasize that these are the design goals. It does not mean it can do these things well. Yeah. All right. It simplifies data availability. So what do you mean data availability? So it is available for different devices. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So using different devices, yeah. So you can read the data. Yeah. So here it tells the community, yeah, different devices can display this type of data easily. So that is the idea it, trying to convey. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Later at some time I may make comments regarding how well it does these goals well. Yeah. Yeah. All right. XML syntax rules. All right, so let's look at some basic, simple rules. The first, XML documents must contain one root element. At top level, one single root element. Then inside this element, then you can have many other elements in the nested structure. Nested structure, external, internal, nested, things like that. And XML prologue is optional. The prologue, the first line, so you describe the version, so that line is optional. If it exists, it must be the first line of the document, like this one. Okay, so we always see, most of the time when we look at one XML content, you will see this line on top. One thing is very special. Here, after so many years, we still use the 1.0 version. See? 1.0 started in 1998. After so many years, people still use that 1.0 version. So that's interesting, right? So that tells, so the standard, pretty much stable when it was created. So the structure is there, very stable. The designers, so they do not feel they have a lot of change on it. So small minor change, not that important. And another thing is, what is this? Encoding UTF-8. So that is just a commonly used, coding method. Specifically, it means Unicode transformation format. The most popular encoding format used by the software industry. So UTF-A is the default encoding for these basic technologies. See? All right. But for the detail of this encoding method, I do not plan to explain the details. Here, we do not need that part. All right. XML tags are case sensitive. This is probably different from HTML. HTML, we know, insensitive, case insensitive. Uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter. But here, it is case sensitive. All documents must be properly nested within each other. This is important. Okay? So the structure, nested structure, it cannot be violated. So anywhere, any place. So if you want to put the one element inside another element, this inner element must be completely inside. So you cannot one part inside, one part outside. Then you violate this rule. If you violate this rule, you may have some serious consequence. So I will talk about that. The consequence of any violation. All right. In XML, the attribute value must always be quoted. HTML, in some special cases, you do not need to put a double quotes, single quotes around attribute values, although it is highly recommended to do that, but you do not need to. In some situations, what I mean is the values do not contain some special characters like space. It cannot contain space. And, other, single quote, double quote, some other special characters. So, but for XML, you need to always use quotes. Quotes here means single quote or double quotes. Two ways you can use. All right. So next, XML Tree. here I want to show you the structure. So visualize the structure of XML document. Yeah. The document form a tree structure. So root, branches, typical tree structures, different levels. Yeah. Here, let me use a simple example to explain this tree structure. Yeah. So other than the first line, the optional prologue, then the remaining part. First, you have a root element. Inside this root element, you can have many different levels of nested elements. Yeah. But if you draw a picture, draw a diagram representing these element structure, you get something like this. Okay? So the top level, branches, going down, element, nested, so nested is always going down to the subtree through branches and organized in different levels. But this tree structure is a little special comparing with our usual tree structure. It has some special property. The special part is this, attribute part. You have attribute. This attribute part you do not treat as a node because this attribute structure is different from other regular usual element structure. It's different. So you do not treat it as a node in the tree, but you treat it as a, added extra information to describe that node. So you attach it to one particular node to provide some extra information. So you can treat it as some special data associated with that node. Or there is a name for it. Sometimes we call this kind of data, we can call satellite data. Satellite data. All right, so that's the simple structure of an XML document. Next, now we want to look at the XML Validator because there are so many rules. When a programmer, they create an XML document, how do you know all the rules are satisfied? How do you check that? Then there is a special tool available. It is called XML Validator. It can be used to check all the XML rules. All right, so here, let's look at those rules to be checked. Here we cannot exhaust all the rules. We just select some main rules to give you some idea. And for those documents, XML documents that follow the rules, we call well-formed. So we want to check if this XML document is well-formed or not. All right, so first, we want to make sure it must have a root element. So that's simple to check. And next, must have a closing tag. So each element must have a closing tag. Okay? So that is very strict. But this property, so if you go back to look at in HTML, then some of the elements you do not need to have closing tag. Okay? Remember, like P tag, paragraph, and HL tag, horizontal rule, and image tag, right? So there are many tags. You do not have to provide the closing part of this tag. Although it's better to provide closing tag, but many people, so they do not use the closing tags. Yeah. XML tags are case sensitive. Yeah. How to check this rule? Because when you use a tag name in the opening tag with some special spelling, right? Uppercase, lowercase, then in your closing tag, you should use the same uppercase, lowercase. Yeah. So that's the part the validator will check. Case sensitive rule. XML elements must be properly nested. Yeah. So nesting structure, yeah, also will be checked. Yeah. And XML attribute names must be quoted. Okay. All right. Yeah. Here, these are just some simple basic rules. Definitely, you can imagine there are many other rules will be checked. Check it. There are many other rules, yeah, not just this short list. Yeah. So that's why people need a tool, XML Validator, some tool to check it. Yeah. Because for human programmer, too much tedious work. Yeah. All right. The consequence of XML errors. The developers may have some errors. It's possible, something not quite right in the XML document. When that happens, what is the consequence? The principle is, principle for the XML processing tools follow this principle. So what's that? With XML, errors are not allowed. So not allowed. So that's principle. No single error is allowed. Yeah. So it must be completely well-formed. But not allowed. What is the consequence? If there is one single error, what is the consequence? Very simple. Yeah. Stop. So applications won't work. Those XML applications won't work even if there is one single error. So for that reason, so you can see the rules are implemented in the strict way. So for that reason, you can see in our document, if we need to use some XML tool, we need to make sure it can pass the XML validator checking. So that's the reason. That's the reason. The XML rules are important for some of the data files that could be used by certain XML tools. Yeah. All right. Yeah. With this background, now we can get to our JSP tags in our JSP. All right. So now we need to consider our JSP files. Okay. So now we try to consider a typical situation when we use this JSP. Now, we know we use this JSP to develop from page, right? From page. So this page will be displayed at the user's end. Yeah. All right. So usually it contains a lot of tags, right? So HTML tags, but you can add some XML tags. So if by any chance you may like to apply some XML tools, to do something special, yeah. All right, but think about, we need to put a lot of JSP code inside. When we put a JSP code, some of the code may not follow the XML syntax. rules. So you can imagine sometimes we do not follow that, right? XML syntax rules. Yeah. That could cause the problem. So when you submit this file for XML validation, it may fail, right? So to fix that problem, so there is a special consideration, okay? So for the JSP tags, use JSP bins, then it will make it following special XML syntax. So that's the reason behind. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So here, what is the consideration here? It differs in 3 ways from HTML syntax. Here, the difference we already covered. Yeah. So in this, basic introduction part, these differences are already covered. Yeah. Here we just go through them one by one. Yeah. Attribute names are case sensitive. Yeah. So we know that. You must enclose the value in single double quotes. Yeah. For any attribute. Yeah. We have that. Yeah. Non-container elements should end with tag, with this, or not just, right? Yeah. So here you can see, yeah. For example, if you have the horizontal rule, do not use this because it cannot pass XML validator. You have to change it to space, okay? Yeah. The space is optional, but it is recommended. When you leave a space, you tell people the content of this element is empty. Yeah. So that's usually people use. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here, container, because the element we treat as a container. So you can put content inside this element. So we treat as a container. So non-container elements, we do not put any element in this. We do not put any content in this element. So that's what we call the non-container element. Yeah. So image tag, for example, img tag, it is a non-container tag. Yeah. So this time it tells you need to use this XML style to close it. Okay. Yeah. Image tag. Yeah. So it's a non-container element. Yeah. Yeah. And so then the first 2 syntactic differences, these 2 syntactic differences. So what do you mean differences? Difference comparing with HTML way, the usual HTML way. So these are different. Yeah. Apply to all JSP actions. Yeah. Not just that one. Yeah. This is one of the JSP actions, and you may have other JSP actions. So for all other JSP actions, you need to make sure you follow these rules. Okay? Yeah. So then, with this background, so now when you use JSP tags, so here you can see we try to, there is another level of consideration. Sometimes we may try to make sure our JSP file follow the XML syntax rules. Yeah. All right, so let us finish this second part, C.2.